You think you know me.
He's got his foot on the gas with the hottest of takes.
Don't try to strike everybody out. Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.
While spitting truth with the coldest of hearts.
If he dies, he dies.
He's never afraid to bring the heat.
Well, here it comes, Parkman. Hole number 1, the Terminator. You get a piece of it, you can rename it.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. This is Straight Heat with your host, Patrick Creighton.
Coming up in 40 minutes, we're going to do our best to navigate around the National Basketball Association without mentioning one single thing about Markelle Fultz with Kurt Helin. Before that, you're going to hear from Bill O'Brien on the Thanksgiving holiday as we are on Thanksgiving Eve. And I don't know where you stand personally on Thanksgiving. Jose and I are going to dive deeper into this coming up in a couple of minutes. On Twitter, at Shander Show, at SB Nation Radio, we ask you a very simple question. Find us. We have charged you out there with some on-the-fly homework. And I don't know how far you are on your assignment as well. It's the same assignment for you, Jose, as I gave everybody else out there listening. Find a more bizarre story in sports over the last 10, 20, 30, 40-plus years in sports than Markelle Fultz.
Cut me some slack. I got a whole list for you already.
No, I know you do. I kind of had to create it with some sense of theater, like maybe you slacked off. That's all. Listen, I listened to the show with you and Patrick. It wouldn't be the first time that you slacked off.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
Okay, so I'm being fair to the show itself, not just to you and I. But with that said, I am eagerly anticipating some of these stories. I'll take an obvious one out, all right? And I think that when you look at the severity of it, people are going to tiptoe around it and say, well, I don't know if you can throw it in there because of how serious it is, but it was a sports story. OJ is one that you can definitely say was more bizarre than that. Now, listen, Ray Caruth, if you want to start opening up that door, but is that the level of strange, bizarre and tragic that you have to go to find something that could even remotely come close to competing with Fultz? Listen, I hate to say it, but Thanksgiving is dead. The holiday is dead. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'll tell you why. Eytan Shander, SB Nation Radio.
Guys, the holidays are quickly approaching. Don't wait until the last minute to get a gift. Head over to giftingmap.com today. Giftingmap.com. You're listening to Straight Heat on SB Nation Radio.
And on SBNationRadio.com.
From the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Patrick Creighton.
Watch the historic head-to-head 18-hole duel between Tiger Woods versus Phil Mickelson for a winner-take-all $9 million competition. Capital One, the match, is the highly anticipated showdown between two legendary golfers who have won a combined 19 majors. Comes to you live from Las Vegas on Thanksgiving weekend, Friday, November 23rd. The event is a great alternative to fighting holiday crowds, as you will not want to miss getting together with family and friends for this amazing holiday kickoff event. So the iconic Tiger Woods and five-time major champion Phil Mickelson, generational talents who have transcended the game of golf. Their rivalry continues to be one of the most compelling in sports, and Capital One, the match, will take place on Friday, November 23rd, and will be available via BR.live and pay-per-view starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. For further details of this historic first-of-its-kind event, visit BR.live or contact your pay-per-view provider to place your order, as you won't want to miss this historic event. Eytan Shander in for Patrick Creighton tonight. And I mentioned Thanksgiving is dead. I mentioned the holiday is dead. Before I even dive into that, I want you to hear from Bill O'Brien, Texans head coach, asked about the holiday, and I won't even lead you into anything that he may or may not say. I want you to hear specifically what he had to say about the holiday, the spreads, and everything that comes with it.
I definitely think Thanksgiving it's my favorite holiday. I'm not big into presents, and I don't really enjoy birthdays. I do like Christmas, but I'm not a big present guy. I'd rather eat a lot of food. That's why I like Thanksgiving. I like 4th of July, too.
You're going to say you like New Year's Eve.
That's okay. I don't think today. I think Thanksgiving's awesome. It's football, it's turkey, it's stuffing, it's a couple Coors Lights, and watching football.
Now listen, the initial reaction might be, come on, you look around at other holidays, but he's right. I mean, he's right to an extent, which is this is the easiest holiday to be a guy or a football fan. Let's say that. I don't want to be sex specific, but that's the reality is if you are a diehard football fan, I don't care if you're an 83-year-old grandmother or if you're a 14-year-old student, whatever the case may be, this is why a sport as popular as the NFL is in this country, where over a third of the country is watching the Super Bowl at least every single year, if not more, then it's going to have a spillover effect. And I think what happens is it gets lost in a holiday like this, because holidays are usually used as an excuse for family to get together. Even the Grinch in your family, everybody's got a Grinch or two in their family. I don't want to celebrate whatever gift-giving holiday in December you celebrate, or whatever 4th of July or Independence, whatever it is that you celebrate with other people in your family, the normal holidays. And Thanksgiving is one of them to an extent. You still justify it by saying, well, listen, we're just getting together. Get together, go see your dad, go see your family, go hang out, go tell your mom in person that you love her. And it's used as an excuse at the very least to get together. The problem now is, as you heard Bill O'Brien, and he doesn't speak for just football coaches, and he doesn't speak for diehard people that follow the NFL. He speaks for the majority of America, where Thanksgiving, especially when they added that third game, now that there's a night game, Thanksgiving, and if you were always a fan of the holiday, then it's been relegated, or if you've always looked at it for what it is, which is just a chance to eat and be as gluttonous as you can, then you realize that this is what it's always been. Thanksgiving is now defined as food and football and food. Here's why. Now, Jose, we haven't talked about this ahead of time by any means, but
no, we have not.
You are younger than I am, and it's perfect for this. You live in Houston. I live in Philadelphia. So different parts of the country, different demographics, if you will, for our age. I guarantee that if you talk to the people that you know, and I don't mean family, but I mean friends and coworkers, I assume that you have at least coworkers.
At least, yeah. At least I have that.
I have people that I default as associates. I don't know if I can already say that they're friends, but same principle. Just non-family members. People that would celebrate Thanksgiving elsewhere, not in your home or a family member of yours' home. I guarantee that the overwhelming majority of people that you ask this question would answer, we eat around football. Meaning, when we sit down and eat Thanksgiving dinner is based around football more so than anything else.
I think that's fair. As far as my family is concerned, that's certainly not the case. My family is more into football rather than football, but that's definitely the case with a lot of my friends. They plan their Thanksgiving day around whatever game's on that during the day.
Well, doesn't it make sense, too? Because you've got 3 games, which is 6 teams of fantasy football. Everybody has one degenerate gambler in their family, and if you're looking around and you know the old adage and you don't know who it is, then it's most likely you. So from gambling to fantasy football alone, like Mitch Trubisky could be on the bench. This is what I love about the faux outrage on Twitter and other vehicles of social media. Mitch Trubisky's not going to play, therefore the game sucks and I'm not watching. No, first off, yes, you are watching, and there are so many other reasons to watch, even if you're not a Bears fan, especially if you're not a Bears fan, meaning it's football, there are fantasy implications involved, and there's gambling, which might be one and the same. But that's my point, Jose, which is, even when you take away a draw, like a player, like a star player, and people bitch and moan that there's a backup in there, like with Washington, we just talked to Brian Mitchell about that. there is still so much overwhelming appeal to this sport that I feel like somebody in the house is going to be like, hey, we got to watch, we got to watch the Dallas Skins game. Or, we got to watch the Detroit. Think about it. You've got 3 different regions, New Orleans, Dallas, and Detroit, around the country that are going to be, and that's just the home areas, right? Not to mention the road areas that are going to be dictating when they eat around that game. And that's just the specific diehard, not the spillover effect is what I'm saying.
Let me play a little devil's advocate, though. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, so
I encourage that.
So if you didn't know, which I wouldn't know why you wouldn't, the games tomorrow are Lions, Bears, Cowboys, Redskins, Saints, Falcons. Okay. All right, decent matchups. Christmas Day, NBA. Thunder at Rockets, 76ers at Celtics, Lakers at Warriors, Trailblazers at Jazz. Give me that NBA lineup 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I agree that you're probably going to get a better product. You're going to get a better return of investment of your time on Christmas Day than you will. But that's the difference of the two sports, is that while you know what you're getting ahead of time, which is good, you still know what you're getting ahead of time. I don't know what the hell's going to happen in any of these games, except for maybe, like, the one thing that I'm really sure of is that the last game, the Saints are going to beat the Falcons handedly.
Sure,
But even still, would you be shocked if it were close just because it's a short week?
Yeah.
And, right? I mean, all these things that factor in. That's why I agree with you from the devil's advocate standpoint of, hey, I'm going to get a better return of my time of investment on the NBA game. But when you talk about the unpredictability, when you talk about the once-a-week element of gambling and fantasy football, and there's I've got vested interest in that middle game. So let's just look in Philadelphia. I guarantee you that there are an overwhelming amount of families in Philadelphia that are putting their time of when they eat around that middle game because they want to see that middle game and how it impacts the Eagles. So that's a spillover that we didn't even talk about to open up, where not only do you have the two markets playing, you also have the other teams in that division that are looking around. That's what, bro, I'm telling you, this holiday, because you don't have anything like Bill O'Brien. We go back to the soundbite at the beginning. You don't have a gift or something like that, or independence or something like that to fall back on. And to be honest with you, the average family in America tomorrow is not sitting down and reading stories about the first interaction between the Pilgrims and the indigenous people of this country. That's not happening. So you don't even have history, anything like that attached to it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. All you have right now to represent Thanksgiving is football and food, most likely in that order. There's no Santa Claus. There's no menorah. There's no Independence Day. There's none of that. There's nothing else but football and food right now with Thanksgiving. That's what this holiday is now defined as.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. You mentioned it earlier in the show. This holiday is strictly about being as gluttonous as you can.
That's it.
Yeah, and it's funny because you're right. Like, most families plan their Thanksgiving around the games. It's the complete opposite with my family. Obviously, like a lot of the Hispanic culture, they celebrate Christmas the day before.
Right.
But me and my cousins, we plan whatever the hell we're doing Christmas Day, whether it's watching a movie or whatever we're doing outside, throwing the football around. We plan that around whatever NBA game's on. So rest assured, when the Rockets play the Thunder at 2 p.m. Central on December 25th, we're not playing football until after that game's over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that sport, it's so easy, and this is what I love about it. This is what doesn't die about this entity, this industry that we love and follow and talk about. We're fortunate enough, but we're fans as well, which is that never goes away. And it's rare because you still have, even on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, any gift-giving holiday you celebrate in that month, you still have that family element. Like, I don't feel bad blowing off my entire family for 6 hours on Thanksgiving. And then, all right, you probably don't remember this, but it's one of the first Simpsons ever. Now, I don't know how far back you go with The Simpsons, or if you even watch.
Simpsons.
Okay, so one of the first Simpsons, I think it's like season 2 of The Simpsons, is when Ned opens up the Leftorium, Ned Flanders, and it fails. And Homer Simpson, you don't remember this at all, I'm sure. It's probably...
I'm trying to remember.
Okay,
give me more details.
No. Here's what we're doing. All right. I don't know if you or the episode is older.
Oh, God. Okay.
What's your birthday?
May 3rd, 1994.
We're going to find out if this episode of The Simpsons is actually older than Jose. But real quick, Homer blows off the barbecue, says to Ned Flanders, no, I'm not going. Everybody's at the barbecue next door. And all of a sudden, he gets whiff of what's being cooked over there, grilled over there. And he shows up, and he's got his head down, and rah, rah, rah. And he's just, like, rah, rah. That's what we are now at Thanksgiving. We watch 6-7 hours of football. We take a break. We show up to the dinner table. Hey, it was turkey, stuffing, sauce. And then we go right back to the TV. And we feel no guilt. We feel more guilt on July 4th. We feel more guilt on the gift-giving holidays because there's still an element of family that you're blowing off. Thanksgiving, not at all. All right, I'm really curious about this. Who's older, Jose or The Simpsons episode? Eytan Shander, SB Nation Radio.
Every day can't be hat day.
Take off your hat.
Stop worrying about your hairline today by visiting forhims.com/cheer. That's forhims.com/cheer. You're listening to Straight Heat on SB Nation Radio.
And on SBNationRadio.com.
From the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Patrick Creighton.
Eytan Shander in for Patrick. You won't want to miss the 5-day sale happening this Black Friday through November 27th at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts. During these 5 days only, O'Reilly Auto Parts will offer incredible sale prices on products your vehicle uses every day. Stock up and save big on maintenance, chemicals, motor oil, wiper blades, tool sets, and more. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. So before the break, I made a reference about where we are right now as football fans. And the majority of America, I say more people in this country than not, are football fans. And that's how this whole holiday has devolved, if you will. And I don't want to use even the term devolved because that connotes something negative. It's just turned into, and for better or worse, in my opinion, for better, because at least we don't hide this, into the king of all gluttony days in which we just eat as much as we can, watching as much football as we can, and there's no sentimental value to it. It's just like any other Thursday night where you'd sit down to a big meal and watch football. And people now across this country, because you have 3 opportunities on a Thanksgiving night, will actually set the table based on when their team is playing or when their favorite team's rival or whatever division that their favorite team plays in, if there's a game that impacts that, is playing. So people are actually setting their table around football. And that's what Thanksgiving is. So I made this reference about one of the early episodes of The Simpsons, and you have to go back. Oh, my goodness. This is season 3, episode 3, and it's titled When Flanders Failed. So, of course, I immediately come down on Jose, asking him, come on, how do you not know this reference? And then I thought to myself, wait a second. To be fair, this thing might have come out. This is how long this show has been going. This episode might have come out before Jose even hit the planet. So, once
Before
again,
I was even a thought.
When is your birthday? Once again here.
May 3rd, 1994.
Okay, this episode aired October 3rd, 1991.
Oh, jeez.
91. Now, again, should you have known it as diehard of a Simpsons fan as you profess and claim to be on these airwaves?
Yeah. I would say, yeah. I would hold myself accountable for not knowing that.
Just making sure. Just making sure. Hey, this story with Kevin Durant is ridiculous, and I do want to catch his back. Kurt Heelan's going to join us coming up in 9 minutes. But before that, we opened up with the craziest story in sports that you've seen in a long time. At the very least, it's the most bizarre story, I think, in the last decade in sports. And that's Markelle Fultz, in the matter of maybe 2 months, going from consensus outside of one guy in Boston, #1 pick in the NBA, losing, stripped of his superpowers, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows how. Except for the fact that the one reason that he continues to bank is the reason why he can't play to that level anymore, is the one reason that everybody around him, not his camp, but the team, the media, the fans, discount immediately. Meaning, Markelle Fultz says, I'm hurt. But everybody from Sixers to media to fans say, no, you're not. This disconnect is beyond strange, beyond bizarre, and it trumps what happened before that. The guy who actually drafted Markelle Fultz, who actually irresponsibly attached that Kings pick to a deal with Danny Ainge and the Celtics, Brian Colangelo, his wife, Barbara Bettini, was running 5 burner accounts. And I thought, my goodness, you won't find a crazier story than that. And then all of a sudden, Markelle Fultz forgets how to play. So we ask on Twitter, at Shander Show, of course, if you can find a strange, more bizarre story than that. And you did some pretty good work. I'll give you that. We talked a little bit about this in the break, Jose. Why don't you give me one? And now we took OJ and Ray Caruth. Because, again, if you're going to go down the line, the road of tragedy, if you're going to go down the road of OJ Simpson double murder, like that level of then I think that speaks volumes to where we are with the Markelle Fultz story, no?
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
All right, so I knew you would come up with a couple. Why don't you hit me with one?
All right, just to wet the palate, because I know we're going to get into this a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Matthew Teo.
Manti Teo.
You remember that?
Do I remember this? Okay, so I was on NBC Sports Radio at the time. I was doing a show with Amani Toomer, also on the weekend with Rodney Harrison. So this was great because Manti Teo was at Notre Dame. So I was on the air doing the national show on that network right when this whole thing broke. So what I did, like, this was back when catfishing was brand new.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Was this prior to the catfishing MTV show?
It launched right around that same time, and it got you thinking, well, how much of this was a setup just to get people ready for that TV show, and they happened to catfish Manti Teo. But all of a sudden, you had the audio leak. Bro, you had the audio come out of the Lene Kakua, who was the guy pretending to be the woman. So we would play the audio. We went deep into this. I did turn into Agent Mulder or Scully, and I would replay the audio. And what we would do is, so if you watch the NFL Network, you know Kay Adams is one of the main hosts on the Good Morning Football. So she worked with us at NBC Sports Radio. And I remember she would come in and hang out with us on a segment or two every now and again during the week because we were all in New York City. So she came in, Michelle Beadle would come hang out with us every now and again, too, when she worked at NBC. So I would have our regular guests come in and not tell them and just give them a snippet, like not the full sentence or two that was out there, just like 2 or 3 words, man or woman.
Oh,
and nobody got it right. And you start to listen to that audio and you think, man, how could anybody be so foolish like Manti Teo? Now, here's where it got him. And I never understood this with people who continue to get catfished on Tinder and other apps. How can you become emotionally attached to anything or anybody that you have not met in person? Like, how can you go back and forth and have a conversation with somebody on your phone, via text, on your laptop, whatever it may be, and become so emotionally attached with that person without ever meeting them face to face? Like, that's such a foreign concept, Jose, to me.
That's scary, man. That's what I've been single for about a year now. That what scares the hell out of me about online dating. It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, I would need, I'm still somewhat fairly new here, so I would need to clear my Tinder stories, my Tinder outtakes with Craig Larson, our program director, ahead of time. Like, that's one of the few times in my radio career.
I think it's okay.
Well, yeah, he's probably not listening now, but all I need is somebody out there to get circled back. Let's see. One of the most bizarre.
Give me one.
Okay, so I show up to a beer house, right? One of these outdoor beer garden places in Center City, Philadelphia. I meet a woman. She looks exactly like her picture. She's fairly attractive, a little older than me, low 40s. We sit down. We start to have a conversation, and I mean like a, hey, how you doing? She stops immediately and says, 1 minute, we need to wait for him to get here, and didn't say anything else.
What?
Her husband sits down.
Oh, no.
Proceeds to lay out 2 days a week that I'll have his wife.
Oh, my God.
And the other 5 days in which she'll be with him. He lays out the allowance, how far I can take her, where I can go. It was some of the most bizarre conversation I've ever had in my life. Kurt Heelan joins me next. We won't talk about that, I promise. Eytan Shander, SB Nation Radio.
Waited to the last minute to do your gift shopping? No problem. Head over to giftingmap.com today to see the amazing curated collection of gifts and gifting ideas that the team has assembled for you. Giftingmap.com, your map to great gifting. You're listening to Straight Heat on SB Nation Radio.
And on SBNationRadio.com.
From the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Patrick Creighton.
So the NBA will take Thanksgiving night off, but action tonight and Friday night as well. We bring in one of my favorites, of course, Kurt Heelan at Pro Basketball Talk on Twitter, covering the NBA, lead NBA writer for NBCSports.com. Eytan Shander, SB Nation Radio. Kurt, I'm going to pause and put Markelle Fultz somewhere in the middle, maybe the back end of the conversation, because I'm sick and freaking tired of talking about this storyline. Despite it being the national story across the NBA, LeBron returns home. Let's start there, right? Against a team that's got nothing at all, and LeBron tortures the Cavs every time he's come back there. And how big of a story, honestly, is this? Is it more just about LeBron still kind of getting his feet under him with the Lakers?
He's getting his feet there really well. I mean, two of the last three games, he dropped 44 on Portland last Wednesday, remember? Then he got 51 down in Miami on those old friends. When he plays like that, you look at this Laker team and you think, man, they're kind of dangerous because they're defending really well as a team right now. And some of the guys have figured out how to play with him, and that's really where they are. You know, it's a sink-or-swim season for a lot of these young guys. And look, Josh Hart and Kyle Kuzma, two guys who are finishers, have figured out, like, I got to get to open spaces, I got to work hard and run hard, and good things will happen for me, and it kind of works. Lonzo Ball's kind of getting there. Brandon Ingram's still a work in progress. And all that said, when LeBron goes LeBron, and they've got, JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler and the other veterans around there, it just works. It works well enough that they're going to be a threat in the playoffs. Not probably to Golden State, but they're a tough out for anybody because LeBron's LeBron. Tonight's just going to be interesting. It's not going to be like Miami in the same way. He's not going to get booed mercilessly. They're not going to play the Darth Vader theme when they introduce him.
There's no Akron hates you chants coming tonight?
No, I don't think so. My sense, and when I was out there last year during the finals and beyond, was more like just an acceptance. Like, all right, it's happening this time. We know it's happening. And by the way, he got us a title.
Yes.
That's the
Thank
difference.
you.
That's the difference. So I don't know how warmly he'll be received. But they actually are doing a tribute video tonight, which they never have done before for him. So
that's a step in the right direction there. It's hard for me to think that this is the team. Now, 3 years ago, I'd say, okay, this is LeBron James' reality, where he's still dealing, as you laid out, the growing pains, and they're not deep pains. It's not like the reality of Brandon Ingram is one that's lost by any means, as you laid out. Still room to improve, but there are players around him that are finding their own way as he continues to be LeBron. But it's difficult to think that this will be the lineup. But they also have to deal with something as far as what are they going to move in order to bring somebody in and not wait for free agency. Because, again, 3 years ago you say, all right, well, at the end of the season you have money, you have the magnet of LeBron James. But now as he gets older, you look around and think, how many of these pieces will be moved by the start of the postseason?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how many moves they're going to make during the season unless something really big comes up. If look, Washington's listening to everything. Bradley Beal would be the kind of fit they need. They privately kind of covet. Everybody covets. A lot of teams covet, but they privately really covet Klay Thompson as the kind of perfect number two next to LeBron. Except that nobody thinks Klay's leaving. Nobody thinks, unless they decide to lowball him, which they won't do. Like, Klay's not leaving Golden State. Well, Bradley Beal's available now. Bradley Beal's right there. I mean, he's not quite as good a defender as Klay, but I mean, you're talking somebody almost on that same level. Would be an interesting fit. Would you give up Brandon Ingram? I would probably give up Brandon Ingram in that deal with some veterans to make it balance out and a pick or whatever it's going to take. It's an interesting, I think that there's a possibility for that kind of thing, but more than likely it gets done this summer. I'll tell you, the other guy they've got their eye on that they really think they have a shot at is Anthony Davis, but that's this summer at best, and maybe longer than that.
Yeah, that's going to be a free agency or move as far as being able to spend that money.
Yeah, they've got money this summer, but I mean, look, I don't know who they're going to get. I've heard differing things on Kawhi Leonard, but the best sources I've got say he's not interested in coming to the Lakers. So it's just, we'll see where they can spend that money.
But they'll have options.
Move it eventually.
Right.
Yeah, they will have options.
So there's no way that Beal ends the season as a Wizard.
Oh, I would say I'd say the Otto Porter is the one likely to get moved. Wall's next to unmovable unless they actually, his
that contract is going to be, exactly.
Just $42 million a year for 4 years average, kicking in next year. And he's already showing signs of decline. He's loafing through this season. You'd almost have to throw sweeteners in the deal. I don't know how you'd move him. Beal, there's a lot of interest in, but they don't want to move him. He's their best player. Porter's kind of the guy, I think, if anybody gets moved during the season, it's Porter. I know
Porter's contract, though,
because they're desperate, and so are a lot of teams.
What about the contract situation with him?
He's got he's got the old max. He's got I think it's 25 this year, 27 the next year.
The Porter max, as we called it in Philly, because we were afraid Dario Saric was going to get that money.
Exactly. They Dario's not getting it now.
And we're happy now. But as far as
for the right team, like he's still a solid 3-and-D guy who's not playing terribly well this season. But I think in a new setting, like his length, his defense, his shooting could fit right. And he said, I've heard New Orleans only because New Orleans is desperate to keep Anthony Davis and will kind of like, if they're willing to eat that large salary a little bit, he'd be an interesting fit there. They desperately need a 3.
What are you making so far and I understand it's early and we've seen teams who have had an entire offseason and preseason struggle to gel for the first week, 2 weeks, maybe even month of a season, but you were able to see some specific areas in which Jimmy Butler was able to slide right in and look really comfortable. And it's outside of a couple of isolated plays in which he shut down Kemba Walker in a 60-point night, but just as far as overall, and it's predominantly on the defensive side, but offense now it's coming along as well. This team, how dangerous are they knowing that they're so top-heavy with their starting lineup and not even focusing on Markelle Fultz, Kurt? How kind of light they are on the bench.
Yeah, I think the next issue is to get the role players and the depth around them. You can start to see it come together, like you said, with Jimmy Butler, both defensively and just look. They would get in trouble at ends of games. They got in trouble in the playoff series last year because Ben Simmons can create, and he can get to the rim and all, but he can't shoot. And eventually, you can play far enough off of him and take stuff off to make life difficult for him. Joel Embiid's been brilliant, frankly, this year, just absolutely brilliant. But again, he's not a guy who's going to create his own shot in crunch time. You've got to feed him, and he gets doubled, and he can pass and all that, but it's just not the same thing. It's just hard to make a big work in today's NBA with zone defenses against that. Butler not only wants that ball in that situation, he craves it. And you could see at the end of games how much that mattered to them. The question now, like you said, is they miss guys like Covington and Saric. You shouldn't max out Saric, but those are the kind of guys you need around him now, and they've got to go find those guys around the league. And there will be some over the next couple of years. Like there will be guys they can get via trade or and they've still got assets there, draft picks and stuff they can move. And there's guys that'll be on the free agent market. There's like potentially 200 guys on the free agent market this year because of all the one-year contracts. A lot of guys at the top are going to get paid, and a lot of teams have money, but at some point, guys who thought they were going to get paid aren't, and you're going to be able to get some deals on quality role players.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that plays out because, as you mentioned, with Simmons, you have that contract kind of looming in the background. You already know the Jimmy Butler, the intent is not just to rent him for a season. It's to work on something long term. They have that funky deal with Embiid because Embiid's situation is so unique. And it's kind of like this window for a team like the Sixers. And I know that there are others out there as well, but the window for the Sixers to really make a move is this offseason. And then it's kind of like, all right, and it's not a bad thing by any means, but as far as top 3 or 4 guys that you're moving forward to compete with, you're kind of locked into them if you don't make something happen to what you laid out this offseason.
Yeah, you have to. You can still put the role players and stuff around them. You can put pieces around them, but you've got to go get those guys. But you're right; they're going to be locked in. And by the way, there's a bit of a window on that. Look, Embiid and Simmons are great, but Jimmy Butler's got a lot of money. He's going to turn 30 before he signs this next contract. And it's not, to use my boss's terms, he's not got driving around the city miles on his body. He's got off-roading miles. He plays all out, throwing his body around. Tom Thibodeau ran him into the ground. And there's concern. Look, and I'm sure it's going on in Philly right now, too, with their front office. You're going to have to pay the man, but if you give him 5 years, you very likely could regret certainly the last year, maybe the last 2 of that contract, just because the drop-off will come for him. So there's a little bit of a crunch there to get it done faster rather than later.
Kurt Heelan, Eytan Shander, SB Nation. So I know it's early, and we're not playing that the season ended today by any means, but you look at the difference of health, and I think that there were people that were shocked at the start of the Memphis Grizzlies, and you look around and think, well, hold on a second. You've got a healthy point guard. You've got a healthy center. It's amazing the difference of what happens when guys come back from injury. Are you more shocked, though, at what Portland has been able to do? And again, we're not talking about their playoff history. We're just talking about this small sample size of what they've been able to do to start the season this far.
Yeah, absolutely. I had them as one of the teams I've debated when putting together preseason predictions, which are always entertaining when you look back on them. But when you're putting it together, we're like, all right, assuming that Denver moves into the playoffs and the Lakers move into the playoffs, who's going to go out? And this is Denver. Even though they were the 3 seed last year, Portland was one of the teams I considered because I'm like, well, what did they really do that's different? Everybody kind of knows what they do, but they do what they do well, especially early in the season. Continuity has some real value. But the other thing is they've been really getting great bench play, which is something they didn't have last year. They can sit Lillard and McCollum at the same time and get Evan Turner running the show. Guys like Zach Collins are out there with that second unit, and it's just working for them. They're getting good minutes out of the second unit that lets them rest the starters a little more, not be behind, and it's really paid off. So I am a little surprised, but these kind of fast starts, like we keep saying, it's early in the season, but if you look at them versus, Minnesota, who's had this really slow start, and now, they've won 3 out of 4 since the trade, and great, everything's better in the locker room. Swell. You've dug yourself a hole.
Yep.
Like in the deep West, it is not going to be easy to get out of that hole and get back into a playoff position. Or conversely, if you're Portland, you've given yourself a little padding for an inevitable slump to not fall all the way out. So it matters a lot. Like I think that in the West, nobody's actually worried about Golden State. Beyond that, it's just going to be tight, and a little cushion here and there really helps you.
All right, Kurt, last one. $100 of your hard-earned money. You have to choose who's got a better chance of making the playoffs, the Nets or the Kings?
That's a good one. I will go with the Nets just because the bottom of the East is so
don't give me the open conference cop-out.
I as much as I love watching the Kings and what they're doing, I expect we've already seen signs of it with the coaching. The leaks about the coach not playing Bagley enough or whatever. Just their ability to self-destruct.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's like beyond scope.
Finally, they have something good in their hands and they crush it.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, fans there in Sacramento are completely behind Yeager, the coach. This is coming. I know where this is coming from, and let's just say it's people who are well invested in Marvin Bagley being really good because they pushed to draft him. So, and it doesn't. By the way, you took him. You didn't take Luka Doncic. And by the way, Luka looks really, really good.
Not bad, huh?
So that kind of problem, we could debate where they'll be in 3 years and all that, but right now the optics aren't ideal.
I lied. Last question here. Give me 30 seconds on whatever the hell you think is going on with Markelle Fultz. 45 seconds. I do, man.
I honestly, I have no idea. I wish I had a good idea. I've heard speculation from people who were supporters of him that maybe there had to be something physical because they couldn't figure out the mental stuff. I think it's maybe him this is him needing a break. And he goes and sees a specialist. Whatever happens there happens. Maybe there's something physical, but boy, at this point, man, he needs to be moved into a new location with a new team that knows how to develop guys. It's just time for those two sides to part ways. It's not working out, and I don't know that they're going to get anything back for him, but at this point, it's a sunk cost. You just got to get out of it. Get out of that contract, which is still a number one contract, by the way. It's not cheap.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. At Pro Basketball Talk, Kurt Heelan, lead NBA writer, NBCSports.com. My friend, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, have a great Thanksgiving, buddy.
All right, in this conversation with Kurt, we have some news that comes out regarding Markelle Fultz. We'll get to that coming up next. In for Patrick Creighton, it's Eytan Shander on SB Nation Radio.
Welcome back to Straight Heat on SB Nation Radio.
And on SBNationRadio.com.
From the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's your host, Patrick Creighton.
Eytan Shander in for Patrick. Thanks to Kurt Heelan for joining us. And If you didn't think this story could get any crazier, well, the latest, and this popped initially from The Athletic, Shams and others have since confirmed this, so take it for what it's worth. There are multiple people out there reporting the same thing. And that's the audacity with Markelle Fultz and his camp. They have now requested a trade. So I want you to think about this as we take you into the final hour of the show. Think about the absurdity, the outright absurdity of what's happened over the last, 36 to 54 hours, where Markelle Fultz, in direct response to Brett Brown, the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, saying, I don't know if I'll go to Markelle Fultz or TJ McConnell as my second string point guard, as my number one point guard off the bench to spell Ben Simmons. I can't commit. And the very next day, in response to what sounded and came across like a benching, or at the very least a warning or threat of a benching to Markelle Fultz, he said, I'm hurt. I need to see a specialist for the next month or so and get my stuff together. And now, the day after, he's requesting a trade. There's no way he could have that little self-awareness and people around him with that little self-awareness that they would devalue Markelle Fultz, the next day ask for a trade. It's so ridiculously stupid, yet it kind of falls in line with everything else that's happening. Eytan Shander, SB Nation Radio.